Hi, this is State Senator Ed Kennedy, and I'd like to welcome you today to the 9th edition of the Beacon Hill Buzz. This is the 9th edition, but it's the first one that we're doing using Zoom. And my guest today, I'm very happy to have Anita Walker, who's the Executive Director of the Mass Cultural Council, position that she's held for 13 years. Anita, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. And we're all getting used to this new Zoom technology.
Right. And how are our cultural organizations faring in the wake of the COVID-19 crisis in Massachusetts?
Well, they were hit very hard, Senator, and thank you for asking. We've done a couple of surveys at the Mass Cultural Council to just try to get a little bit of a dipstick test of how the financial implications are affecting our organizations. The most recent one wrapped up April 22nd, and on that date, we had counted something in the neighborhood of $250 million in real-time financial losses to our organizations, and something like 15,000 jobs lost, furloughs, layoffs, and so forth. We are in the process of doing a follow-up survey as we speak, Senator, that will not only give us more up-to-date information on the financial impact to date, but it's also going to tell us something else very important. How much is it going to cost to reopen our organizations? And there will be costs associated with it. It could be things that they have to spend in order to make their facilities safe. And there are also going to be adjustments to their business model because we're not going to be able to have as many people at any one time in our auditoriums and theaters.
Okay, and I'm sure you're aware that Representative Pignatelli and Representative John Barrett from Western Massachusetts both filed a bill which will be coming out of my committee this week with an ought to pass recommendation and going, I believe, to House Ways and Means. And that legislation would allow for a $75 million fund that would be administered by the Mass Cultural Council and would be aimed at trying to bring back all of the people that have suffered for these past months economically and just in general. And I think the Mass Cultural Council has endorsed that legislation, right?
Yes, we have. And we're also going to be able to provide a lot more data as a result of the survey that we're conducting right now that's really going to back up the need for financial support, which is enormously needed, along with technical assistance that our organizations are going to need in terms of how to manage their audiences to keep their employees safe and keep their audiences safe as they come back.
Okay. What are some of the creative moves that cultural organizations have made throughout Massachusetts in order to try to cope with the virus currently? Could you give us a couple of examples?
Well, we're doing one of the things everybody else is doing right now. They're turning to technology. And, you know, it's really hard because one of the things that our field does so magnificently is bring people together to create community. And, you know, that's not a thing we can do during COVID. So they found ways through technology to keep their audiences engaged, keep bringing people together. It's everything from our teaching artists who have taken their curriculum that they typically take into the school classroom, and of course our schools have been closed for a few months now, and providing that curriculum online and taking it into the home. And one of the things that I've been hearing that's kind of a unanticipated but wonderful consequence is when the teaching artist brings their material into the living room or into the kitchen with families, not only does the child benefit, but the parents become engaged in as well. So that's one good upside to this technology. A lot of our organizations are streaming their recorded concerts or plays and so forth. And I've even seen in some of our creative youth development programs, you know, this thing hit right as we were entering spring, and that's usually the culmination of work that you are doing throughout the course of the year, and that usually ends up with a wonderful performance or exhibition. All of those things could not happen this year because of COVID. So they found ways to construct all of their work into Zoom or other technology so that could still be presented to the public. Plus, I've also seen organizations use this technology to do those very, very essential fundraisers that they were also not able to do in person.
I think too that there were a lot of organizations that usually use their fourth quarter money for marketing, and it didn't make sense to do that in the fourth quarter. So we were able to ease up with those, so that they didn't have to spend that money that way and could use it for other things that would be more meaningful than marketing money would be this year, I think.
Senator, if I could just throw one other thing in. We
Sure.
got new data that I haven't even had a chance to tell you about, so I'm going to tell you about it in real time
Okay.
here on your program. And I am so proud of this. So one of the things that the Mass Cultural Council did is, as soon as the shutdown occurred, as soon as we saw the implications of COVID on our organizations, we immediately started rolling out some new programs to help our organizations. And one of them was called the Safe Harbors Program. And I know you and I have talked about that.
Yes.
That involved direct grant making of $2,250 grants to all of the organizations in our operational support program. But it also involved immediately putting together technical assistance to help our organizations access that federal funding that was coming available through the CARES Act, through the Small Business Administration. Well, we just got the data on that. And I think you will be happy to hear that we had about, I would say, 1,600 participants in our webinar series through the Safe Harbors program. 100% of those who took our webinar and applied for that SBA funding were successful.
Wow.
And as a matter of fact, we brought in to Massachusetts more than $21 million in federal funding directly to our cultural organizations through the CARES Act funding as a direct result of our preparing them to make successful applications.
I think one of the most disappointing events was the Plymouth 400 festivities that were planned for this year, which has been a couple of years in the planning, I believe, and also there was quite an investment in the planning of that celebration, which would have celebrated the 400th year since the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth. Do you know? Do they have any plans to put that off and maybe do it at 401 years, or is it just, have we just lost the moment?
You know, that's a very good question. But, you know, that was one moment of a series of moments.
Yeah.
And I had an opportunity to participate on the commission. And that was really envisioned. Obviously, the landing of the Mayflower in Plymouth is an enormously significant historical event, and there was a strong partnership that was built between Massachusetts and the UK, who was also marking that particular event. But it was really the beginning of a series of significant anniversaries that are going to be running for the next 10 years all over the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. You've probably heard of Revolution 250. Lots of 250th anniversaries are going to be taking place all over Massachusetts. So while that moment we weren't able to celebrate in real time or commemorate or recognize in real time, doesn't mean it can't be part of a story of the unfolding of the beginnings of this country and our democratic form of government.
Thank you. Can you tell us how important the arts and culture are to the economy recovery in Massachusetts?
Yeah, that's a really important question, and it's an important question that we think about as we think about how we rebuild the economy of Massachusetts, which took a hit in every single sector because of the COVID crisis. And I think it's really important to realize that our economy is really more of an ecology than a series of distinct individual industries. So if you even think about Lowell, Senator, to have the Lowell Memorial Auditorium open in and of itself will be great. But what if there are no restaurants? Or to have restaurants opening, but there are no destinations like the wonderful Mill Museum and the canals and the other activities. Or to have hotels open with no restaurants. All of them are really codependent. And we need to look holistically at our economy and how we support bringing back all of the elements that are supportive of each other.
Yes, I think that's, the Senate has been divided up into several working groups that have met, and each of those groups meets a couple of times every week to look at some of the problems. And, one of it's the ripple effect, I think, that people don't really consider right off the bat. So that if you close an event, for instance, in Western Massachusetts, where Mocha, Tanglewood, and Jacob's Pillow are all shut down, that means a lot of people that maybe would go out there for an extended period of time, they won't go there. So they won't use those restaurants. They won't go to those B&Bs. And then the people at the restaurants aren't going to be making enough money, so then they're not going to be able to pay their rent. And then because they can't pay their rent, now the landlord's not going to be able to pay the mortgage. And it kind of just goes on and on like that, doesn't it? And I think it does in probably just about every single community.
Well, and as you well know, Senator, the cultural landscape of Massachusetts is part of the third largest industry in Massachusetts, which is tourism. And so when are people going to feel confident to start traveling again? When are that outside money that is so potent here in the Commonwealth? We love other people's money and having that come into Massachusetts. And it comes in from all over the world because of the quality and the diversity and the breadth of the cultural attractions that we have here that people come every single year to see. So I think the tourism viability and health and sustainability is going to be really important to a lot of sectors of the economy in Massachusetts.
Yes, I think for New England, just for instance, I think a lot of Canadians summer or spend some part of their summer vacation in New England, and they're not going to be able to do that this year. And that will have a big impact on not just Massachusetts, but New Hampshire and Maine and Rhode Island and Connecticut to a lesser extent as well. This year, the council launched a brand new health initiative called Culture RX. Is this still moving forward, and how would this be relevant now?
Well, it's more relevant than ever. You may recall, Senator, we have been thinking about this program for a couple of years, doing a lot of research, because while the arts and culture are a crucial and central part of the economy of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, they are also a crucial part of the health and well-being of the people who live here and people who come to Massachusetts. So we were trying to develop a program, and we did develop a program called Culture RX, which thinks about how we make sure that everybody has access to the cultural amenities. The EBT Card to Culture program, which has had nearly 500,000 admissions all over the Commonwealth, with organizations opening their doors to people who would otherwise not have an opportunity to come. We launched the first in the nation partnership with the Health Connector, which is the state's subsidized insurance program, so that people who have a Health Connector card can have access to arts and cultures and the health and well-being benefits of that. And we were just literally 2 weeks before COVID hit. You may recall we had a hearing up at the State House with a joint hearing with the Committee on Public Health and with the Tourism, Arts, and Cultural Development to show evidence of the robust connection between these two activities in Massachusetts. The arts and culture are seen as a protective factor against, at the time, the epidemic that we were talking about, which was loneliness and isolation, which leads to many health consequences, from depression to suicide to even heart disease and other very, very serious and expensive health consequences. So we were launching Culture RX to really address that. Well, now, ironically, isolation is the way we combat another more serious problem, which is the COVID virus. So we know that when we start to come out of this, people have been isolated and quarantined for at least 3 months now, and there are going to be health consequences to that. I'm sure you hear it every single day, Senator, about people who just can't stand to be alone anymore, locked up in their homes, not being able to participate in their communities. So we think Culture RX is going to be, again, more important than ever as we come out the other side of this COVID crisis. So we are still moving that program forward, not as aggressively as we started, because the whole idea was to get people into our cultural organizations, which are now closed. But we are in the process actually now of awarding some pilot grants to, I would say, probably 10 or so partnerships that are going to continue to advance the work around Culture RX. And again, the two big problems, I don't need to tell you, Senator, the economy and health. You can't fix either one of them without a robust arts and cultural sector.
Right. I totally agree with that. The state budget will not be ready on July 1st. How will the Mass Cultural Council continue to move forward, and what can your constituents expect going forward on the short term until the budget is done?
Thank you for asking. So The Mass Cultural Council is first and foremost a service organization and a grant making organization. Lots of times people think about the grants first, but there isn't a single dollar that goes out of the Mass Cultural Council into the hands of an organization or an individual that isn't embedded in a package of services. And the services are what make sure that every single state tax dollar that we invest does the most and the highest and the best work that it possibly can. We know that we probably won't be able to see a definitive budget for FY21, maybe even till a few months into the fiscal year. I don't know how long it's going to take. I understand that, we're also waiting on a federal stimulus package that could help the legislature determine what kind of dollars they're going to have to work with for the next fiscal year. But our service agenda is as robust and perhaps even more needed than ever before. So we are focusing on the service agenda that we provide, the technical assistance, working with communities, all throughout the COVID, by the way, even though our entire staff, like you and I, have been sitting in our studies or at our kitchen tables or in the dining room or holed up at the bedroom with the door shut, we have been connecting with our constituents. The local cultural council programs make what they call house calls, which are continual conversations and convenings with their constituents all over Massachusetts. Our creative youth development program every single week holds a Zoom call with people who work in this field, and it's now attracting as many as 75, 100 people from all over the country to be part of that conversation. So we continue to lean in on the service agenda even while we've been sequestered at home. That will continue in the early months of the fiscal year as we prepare for whatever comes our way in terms of financial resources to finish out the year. We have a threefold agenda for the next fiscal year. Recover. We know we have to make our industry well. Rebuild. We have to rebuild our industry, bring them back to life, help them understand what the new business model is going to be in the context of a COVID environment. And I think this is a really important, the third, recover, rebuild, and renew. And renew was brought into high relief over the last couple of weeks as we became much more attentive to the issues of racial injustice in our country after the death of George Floyd. And to us, renew means if you're going to rebuild your organization, if you're flat on the ground like they are now, not open, you're going to open up, you're going to rebuild. Let's eliminate some of the legacy of white privilege that has been part and parcel of every organization in our Commonwealth. And let's institute, as we reopen and rebuild, let's renew with a new type of organization that is welcoming to all. If your house was flattened by a tornado or a nor'easter, you wouldn't reinstall the old rusty plumbing. You'd get rid of it and you'd put in what's new and what's better. And we want to see our organizations renew as well in the next year.
Okay, that is a big issue. The COVID-19 virus has had a big impact and continues to have an impact on the whole country and indeed a great part of the world. But in recent weeks, the nation's also been affected by the killing of George Floyd and the public outcry for racial justice. And what role do the arts and culture play here? And how is the Mass Cultural Council responding?
Thank you for asking. So diversity, equity, inclusion has been a pillar of our strategic plan, the current strategic plan that we are in. So what I mean by that is we have 4 pillars. It's about the economy, it's about building communities, it's about the next generation, and it's about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It stands on its own as a goal of the Mass Cultural Council. Since we enacted this strategic plan 2.5 years ago, we have really focused on this issue. We did 2 years of internal examination of our programs and our processes. Are they fair? Are they unbiased? Are they inclusive? Do they engage the broader public into our organizations? And this is culture change. Who are we as human beings within our organization? And what biases do we have that we may not have recognized before? We've made a lot of progress at the Mass Cultural Council, and we're not done yet. So first, in terms of our agency, in the last 5 years, we have changed our hiring practices and the way we recruit people so that today more than a third of our staff are people of color. That is a dramatic change in the face of this agency over the last 5 years, I would say. We've changed the way we do a lot of our grant making to eliminate unintended bias that may be part of the program. And we call it out. When we assemble panels to review grant applications, we start out talking about unintended bias. And we do a little training session with every single panel. And what's happened is people in the midst of the panel review, panelists will say, oh, wait a minute, I think that was unintended bias when I just said that. So just even bringing it to the attention of our panel members helps them recognize it when they wouldn't have before.
Right.
And outreach into communities is greatly expanded over the last 5 years. In fact, we just closed applications for our Gateway program, which is the way organizations get started in our operating support. Of 91 applications, half of them are from organizations that have never had a grant from the Mass Cultural Council before. So this is one of the ways that we're trying to address this, but there's a lot more we can do. We have a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force that is updating our planning around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a COVID through crisis team, which is now starting to engage the field in conversations, serious, honest conversations about what we all need to do together. And we're probably going to be putting some levers into our grant making to assure that our organizations don't just make the verbal commitment and publish the testament, as we've seen so much in the last few weeks, but they turn that into reality.
Okay. Anita, as you finish your 13-year tenure with the Mass Cultural Council, and as you look back on those 13 years, what do you consider to be the agency's greatest accomplishments during that time, that 13-year period?
You know, that's a tough question because we've done a lot of work and we've done a lot of things. We've greatly expanded our reach to the fact that today, a new study by our national partner, the National Assembly of State Arts Agency, says that Massachusetts makes more grants to more communities than any other state in the country. And I'm talking about a lot bigger states like New York and California and Texas. We do more in Massachusetts than any other state in the country, and I'm proud of that. But I think, importantly, it has been the gradual transition over the last 13 years, and intentionally so, from a grant-making state agency to a service organization. So that every single person who is on our staff, we don't have bureaucrats, we don't have administrators, we have content experts who are constantly out in the field. Our agency is strong. Our agency is strong because we are a service agency and we have established a relationship of trust with the field. And I think trust between our state agency and our staff, who people all over the Commonwealth know by name, is the strength of the agency. The service builds trust, which builds strength. And Senator, I will tell you very candidly, I've worked in government for 30 years. 13 here has been my privilege in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I believe in public service, and I believe in the powerful role of government. And I think the role of government has the power to do good and to do it well. And I feel sad whenever I read headlines or stories or commentary that show a level of cynicism and distrust of government. And I think what we've built at the Mass Cultural Council, this positive relationship and this sense of trust and shared work and responsibility, I think that's the thing I'm most proud of.
And what do you plan to do now that you'll be retiring and moving to a different state, and it'll be a new chapter for you? And what's that chapter going to look like? Do you have any definite plans?
Well, no, I don't. As a matter of fact, I have a blank canvas in front of me. You know, I've worked for 50 years, Senator. Every single day I've gotten up in the morning and I've had a job in front of me, and I was either thinking about that job or thinking about the next job. And I haven't the slightest idea what it's going to be like on July 1st when I wake up in the morning and there is no work in front of me that has to be done or I haven't gotten done or that I have to worry about. So I'm going to just savor that for a little while. I'm moving back to my home state of California. I haven't lived there in 40 years plus. I have two grown sons who live on the West Coast, and I want to be in the same time zone as them. So when they call me at 9 p.m., it's not midnight, and have a chance to see them more. I really don't know what the future holds, but that's kind of the scary and exciting part.
Well, I'd like you to wish you all the best in your retirement. I have to say that I think you should be very proud of the job that you've done over the past 13 years for the Commonwealth. I'm very proud of the job that you've done, and the Commonwealth is going to miss you. So I wish you all the best. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I'm going to miss you going forward, but hopefully your replacement will be as nice, as enthusiastic as you are.
Well, it's been a pleasure to work with you, Senator. You've been a true champion for your community, for your district, and for the arts and culture. And it's absolutely been a joy to work with you. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And again, this is State Senator Ed Kennedy, and this is the 9th edition of the Beacon Hill Buzz, and we will see you next time. Thank you.